Hello everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. We have multiple tales of compliance of the malicious variety today, and our first story of the day is by 6463694. Client wants us to create a design exactly like their ugly PowerPoint. We comply. As a designer, I try to educate my clients on design and why something has to be done a certain way. My agency is not cheap, so we make it quite clear that they are paying for our experience and knowledge, not some Photoshop monkey. Most of the time, my clients are appreciative and enjoy the extra guidance and professional advice. Occasionally, we get fun jobs. The sales pitch went well enough. The business owner, Bob, seemed like a decent guy and happy to trust our professional expertise. However, shortly after signing the deal, he brought on a new manager, Karen, who was put in charge of marketing, including the new website we were just contracted to do. It quickly became clear that Karen thought of herself as a multidisciplinary genius and despises us because she thinks she can do better than a professional design agency. Karen loves sending over incomprehensible design instructions and feedback in the form of design mock-ups she creates in PowerPoint. They're as ugly as the devil's beehole after a strong curry. But we try our best to translate the abominations she birthed into good-looking professional design proposals that best reflects the intent of her ideas. Karen did not like it one bit. Karen was rude, uncooperative, and removed Bob from the email threads when we tried to reach out to him to get his opinion. When we sent over a design, she would complain about how it wasn't what she wanted and scream over the phone while our team patiently explained why we couldn't design exactly as she wanted. Mainly, it would be ugly as heck and nobody would want to do business with them with a website like that. The last time, Karen complained about how we were stupid morons for not doing what she wanted. We got her on the phone with Bob. She was screaming incomprehensibly and nobody got a word in. Finally, Bob took her side and said, "Karen is extremely experienced and knows what she's doing. I want your team to follow every instruction exactly as she asks." No problem. Once again, Karen sent over a ridiculous 70 megabyte PowerPoint. If we followed it exactly, it would look like a website from the 90s with the worst UX ever. We went through every little pixel of her PowerPoint, asking her, "So do you want us to copy this exactly?" To which she would reply with a smug yes. So we documented her instructions down to the letter to cover our butts. Once again, we asked Bob, "Are you sure?" His reply was, "Yes please, hurry up and make those changes exactly as she asked." Okie dokie. We copied every ugly font choice, every terrible gradient, every hideous element into the design. We even went the extra mile to export the ugly lopsided shapes she drew as PNG graphics so it would all be exactly as she wanted. Then we sent the design over. Here is the design. We have done everything exactly as instructed. Karen once again replied, taking Bob out of the loop, "Perfect, now it wasn't so hard to do things exactly as I asked, was it?" Winky face. We waited. Bob exploded, demanding a meeting the very next day to explain why we were delivering such shoddy work. We go to the meeting and Karen starts demanding that we propose a completely new design. We presented all past designs, the document in which Karen confirmed that she wanted all the changes, the countless emails in which we painstakingly explained to her why her ideas suck, and finally, the last email in which she praised us. You see, Bob, after our last call with you, we had followed Karen's instructions to the letter exactly as she had asked. She seemed very happy with it. I am confused. Why the quick change of heart? I then pull out the contract and calmly point out the portion which stated the number of design proposals we would create. Karen had used up all of it. I had reminded her that she was limited to X number of proposals, but she clearly didn't remember any of it because she didn't bother reading our emails and would keep talking or yelling over us when she spoke on the phone. I looked Bob in the eye and told him he could either pay extra for each additional new proposal Karen wants or choose from the existing designs done. They ask for some time to discuss privately. We break for coffee. Well, Karen is extremely experienced in this field. We will go with the last design since it is exactly as she wanted. Even my intern couldn't hold back his surprise. As we drive back to the office, he asks, "Is Karen sleeping with Bob or something? Why does she have him by the balls like that?" I shrug. It's his business and we're getting paid anyway, and he clearly doesn't appreciate our design expertise after all. The less time we spend arguing with them, the more time we could use to focus on my appreciative, good clients. We make Bob and Karen sign off on the design and finish up the project quickly. Karen still tries to be difficult, but we stick to the contracted terms and she couldn't do anything. 2 months after the project ended, I get a call from Bob. He began with some small talk about innocuous project-related business, but I realized it wasn't the purpose of his call. Karen had been fired after making more serious mistakes causing major losses to his company. He sounded contrite, but did not offer any real apology. "That's terrible, Bob. I'm so shocked. I thought Karen was extremely experienced and knew what she was doing." If any of you guys are the creative types, would you be able to accept that they wanted this absolutely subpar idea developed, even though you have what is, in your opinion, a professional and well-designed vision for what it could be? It is a paid job, so that does factor into it. Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by ZuneDai. "I don't like your painting. Change it." About 10 years ago, I was in my second year of studies in fine art at a fairly good university. You have your fair share of obnoxious and pretentious idiots. A lot of the lecturers were pretty cool, but you get some of them that act like ticks for no particular reason. As part of being a second-year fine art student, you have to do 4 major areas of art. I chose drawing, painting, sculpting, and printmaking. I had a few hiccups with some lecturers in the sculpting and drawing departments, but nothing too bad. However, I butt heads with the second-year painting lecturer quite often. We'll call him Jack. Jack looked to be a fresh master student and not much older than myself. Regardless, I always try to teach a teacher as a teacher. Jack had some gripes with some of my paintings. He hated that I wanted to do a landscape in portrait format. He only ever specified that we paint a landscape, never the orientation we had to use. I also leaned quite heavily on Asian traditional art at the time. Before we can go to the final painting, we have to make quite a lot of sketches, often with oil pastels. After a design I made for the landscape I wanted to draw, Jack's very first gripe was that it was too Asian, that I should use references and influence from Western culture and history, because I'm not Asian. I had to make use of Western symbology, landscapes, references, and such, including some from my own country. Cue malicious compliance. I kept the design fairly similar, as he never said I needed to make any changes there, but a few things I added helped to bring balance to the image. I created a mixture of East and West. I used an Asian print style for painting and paired it with a Western style, while incorporating some references from my country. I basically ended up with a pseudo-oriental setting of a landscape. He was so unhappy that it was still in portrait format despite it being a landscape. Throughout the painting process, Jack kept reminding me that I was, indeed, not Asian. I simply nodded. As a little extra to send him over the edge just a bit more, I incorporated a mixture of kanji, hiragana, and katakana, selected specified symbols that look very close to Latin letters, and painted the name of the painting on the green frame that I painted around it. He did not like it, but there was nothing he could do as I had complied to his requests. The last painting I did, I decided to follow through on my Western Asian fusion style. I was a big fan of a very certain, well-known, and a very popular artist whose most famous painting can be seen in the Louvre. It was his art that originally inspired me to explore fine art. I decided to give homage to him by doing a painting in a similar setting to his. My idea was to combine the pose and character with something Asian. I started creating a female sitting in a garden in the traditional Asian way, with a lake and some protrusions of land, mimicking Asian landscapes, and her hands on her lap. This became yet another thorn in Jack's side, but he couldn't do anything about it as this was a do-whatever piece, and I had been incorporating not one, but 2 Western references. One referencing an artwork and one referencing an art style. Now, the area where I sit made it easy for anyone to immediately see my painting as soon as they got upstairs to the studio. Jack was a heavy smoker and often went out for a smoke break. Every time he'd come up, my painting would be the first one he'd see. While I was painting, I made sure to use simple colors to mimic the Western style. At some point, I was painting the hair, which flared out quite a bit and was quite long. It took up about 15% to 20% of the painting space itself, but it was just a solid purple color. I had painted this with the intention of adding some highlights using a lighter color. Jack came upstairs one morning and saw the purple abomination that was my painting. He came over and with a big frown said, "I don't like the color purple. Change it." I was stunned. I asked to confirm and Jack insisted that he hates the color and that I should change it. More malicious compliance with a bit of revenge. I took a palette knife and scraped off the purple paint. It was oil, so removing the layers of paint was quite an easy task. It left me with a fairly dim purple underlayer. I started painting streaks of reds and blue, making sure not to mix the two colors in the painting process, and filling up the area I set out for the hair. Jack came around before going back downstairs to check on my painting. He was much happier that I refrained from using his most hated color. Fun fact, for those that don't know art, if you place streaks of red and blue next to each other and you step away far enough, you'll see purple. My desk was just far enough that as soon as you come up the stairs, all you would see was, again, purple. Jack would come check my painting up close quite often and often gave input on how to fix things I was in progress of fixing or working on. He always had this disgruntled look when he came up the stairs and saw my painting. Again, he couldn't do anything as I was fully compliant in what he asked for. When it came to grading my art, other lecturers would join in and give their opinions. I could see in his face that he was excited about my art in particular, maybe because he had so many gripes with it. The other lecturers loved the style and ideas I used in my art. I could feel his heart sink in that moment as he tried to plead about the problems he saw. The other lecturers dismissed it and called it creative. He had no place to argue as a professor overruled him about everything. It most certainly added some color to his face. Jack stopped lecturing at the university a few years later and got replaced with an even better lecturer. One that did indeed like purple and was a fan of the purple abomination. Two things. One, art is so subjective that how can this guy say that you can and can't do certain things, and especially saying you can't use purple because they don't like the color purple? That is not a good lecturer in any kind of art class. Second, what's their problem with somebody doing Asian stuff if they're not Asian? You have to be of Asian descent to do an Asian project? This guy just seems not right. This next story is by Shake It to the Grave. Karen gets full refund for music lessons. In March, I knew hard times were coming for everyone, so I voluntarily moved all of my music students online, offering pay what you can afford, effective immediately. Lessons are paid in advance per month. The only condition, if you are experiencing financial distress as a result of COVID, please only pay what you can afford. No minimum, no questions asked. 1 week later, the essential services shutdown became mandatory anyway, as it turns out. I retained 100% of my students with only 3 people taking me up on my offer. I was totally stoked. I was overjoyed to help out my music community because I didn't want their education to suffer. Also, I refused to let the virus for anyone to cease their musical journey. Looking back years later on and thinking, I know exactly the moment when I stopped playing music and that was because of the virus. Lastly, also because when I was a young musician, my teacher generously offered me a similar deal, and now it was up to me to pass it forward, and this is an honor. Enter Karen. Actual name, to provide some character reference. Pre-COVID, when she'd enrolled, I made an exception to open up a slot for her during morning hours. I only teach nights. She then wanted to come in sometime between 12 and 3 p.m. Having been told to just choose a single 30-minute time slot, she arrived early anyway. I had to text her and say, I see you've arrived, but I'm in the middle of something right now. I'll be out at correct time. Thanks. We kept this up until she started coming in on time. Another time, she requested that I give her another student spot after their school holidays. I politely declined, saying that would be not only unfair but completely heartbreaking to one of my students. She compromised with, "Well then how about after the summer holidays?" That's Christmas in Australia where I am. Also, she would regularly talk to me about the expensive hotels she and her family would stay in while overseas, as well as the new house renovations they were currently having. These points became relevant because when I announced, "Move online, pay what you can afford," she is the only person who hits me back with, "So we keep attending face-to-face this month?" I said no, it's effective immediately. She said, "But this month the fees are still the same?" I replied, "I'd be happy to return March's remaining fees. Just send me your details and I'll handle it immediately." Within the hour, I had refunded her the full amount with the following text. "Hi Karen, your March fees are refunded. Thank you for your custom and please consider your daughter's lessons discontinued. I regret that I'm simply not in a financial position to offer a pay what you can afford system to my students while also refunding past payments, as that would put me out of business immediately. However, that refund was your preference and I wish to respect your request. I wish you, your daughter, and your family all the best at this difficult time. Take care." I said goodbye and felt great. Her daughter will be fine. There's heaps of great teachers in my area. Just might be hard to find someone good who offers pay what you can afford in a time of crisis. Good riddance. You got the money and you're gonna complain about that situation, it's just not worth your time or the effort really. So I definitely don't blame OP for just refunding and completely severing any of that contact. The less stress, the better, especially during these times. And our final story of the day is by Fudge Brownie 1999. Of course you can have the password. I'll just change it for you. This story begins when I, after a year of conflict with my bosses, finally end my last day of work for their small company. To just give an example of why I hated working there so much. Once my female boss, let's call her Sonia, spends about 15 minutes chewing me out in our company group text for something her husband, the other boss, did. Things like that happened a lot, and I learned only a few weeks ago that in the last 5 years, about 12 employees left in a less than normal manner. Mind you, at any given time, only 3 employees work for this company, so 12 in 5 years is a lot. Sonia was so unkind to me that I'm still scared of her now, but today she sends me a message asking for my account password. Me, being the nice ex-employee that I am, send it to her over text. Only I changed it to be 20 characters long, with multiple L's and capital I's, which are indistinguishable over text. And because it's over text, she won't be able to copy and paste it. Yes, this is a very minor malicious compliance, but to me, it feels like a small victory over an unkind person, and I'd take that over standard compliance any day. The only flaw with this strategy is if they have an app that's on both their phone and a computer, or at least a website, they can still copy and paste it. But the thought of them being kind of illiterate as far as that goes and having to actually type it out is a beautiful idea of just pure frustration and confusion why it doesn't work. The only thing is I would be afraid they'd keep messaging me, asking why the password isn't working and continually bothering me until I finally do something that helps them or block them in return. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today, so if you have a favorite story of the day, let me know which one and why in the comment section down below. But besides that, if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving the video a like and subscribe if you haven't and turn notifications on so you'll never miss an upcoming video. No matter what you did, whether it was just watching the video or commenting, subscribing, whatever you do. Thank you all so very much for supporting me right here on the Storytime channel. Any single thing you do helps the channel grow that much more and I appreciate the heck out of it. I hope you all have a wonderful day and until next time, I'll be right here on the Storytime channel.